Sirius XM Sports presents At the Races with Steve Bick. Horse racing, handicapping, interviews. This is At the Races with Steve Bick.
From Belmont Park. Not from Bensalem, but on the way to Bensalem, Pennsylvania, later today. Pennsylvania Derby, Cotillion weekend, but it's going to start out right here in Elmont. We're at Belmont and stayed over after coming down yesterday. And as promised, that rain, it came through. Gorgeous now, though. So the dry out period will commence off the turf here, off the turf. I think pretty much, I saw pretty much everywhere, right? Up and down the eastern seaboard. So, but it's all right. It's going to dry out. And the weekend action should be very good. Sirius 219, XM 201, Sports Zone 964, if you're listening to Sirius XM online, and at our website, stevebykcomposttypetribeeventsp25095. And got a busy morning. We've got a lot of handicapping to do, and I want to make sure you're aware and ready for even the things that we don't get to, because there's some very good far-flung action around, and we'll survey it all, and at least touch on it and make you aware. The backdrop, of course, that is an ominous and disheartening part of the weekend is what is going to occur in Arlington Heights tomorrow. We'll talk to Marcus Hirsch, top of hour 2, and we'll get Marcus's pulse, anyway, for where things are. The story that emerged yesterday involving the dates applications at least sets the stage for next year, and as for what is happening in long term at Arlington, it's not 100% certain because nobody's really talking. And Marcus will lay that out. And if you followed some of his live tweeting and then after he wrote the story yesterday, you could tell he's as disgusted as anybody. And in part, also because no one, most specifically, no one at CDI will comment and have any, real definitive information as to where things stand and what the prospects are. Meanwhile, the Hawthorne team and their their role as the sole survivor, more or less, in Chicagoland, a prospect you would not have imagined. I don't know how many years ago. If you took snapshots of this over and over again, I mean, that would be an interesting time lapse. But racing will continue in Chicago no matter what, and no matter what happens at Arlington. And as I said, I don't know, months ago, when this news started to really firm up, there was undoubtedly a period that no one would have imagined that Chicago racing wouldn't include Washington Park. And yet it's interesting. I'll bring it up with Marcus. When you look at who's entered, they've got a very nice full field slate for tomorrow. But one name that kind of jumped off the page at me a little bit was Frank Kirby. And Frank Kirby, next week, will be a good candidate for a kind of a post Arlington discussion. Frank Kirby is 80-something and has been around forever. Came out of the Southwest, and part of that arc of training, much like Scott Hazelton's father, Richard Hazelton, the Arizona to Illinois circuit back and forth. Frank Kirby, very similar, and Frank Kirby, stints at places like Exarban. So I'd be very interested what his perspective is. He's been in Chicago, I don't know, half of his career, 30, 40 years. The Blocks, of course, Block well represented on the card. Larry Ravelli. Mike Campbell has a horse in. He's got a 2-year-old filly in the 6th. Michael Rivas has got one in the 3rd. I saw him. Ingrid Mason. Some of the names: Michelle Boyce, Doug Matthews, Andy McKeever, Hugh Robertson. Some of the fixtures of Illinois racing. One name that's absent, that did not want to seemingly come back for this, Brian Williamson. And we've talked to almost all of these people at one point about the situation. So Marcus later, hour 2. Marty McGee is going to join us shortly. Interesting set of stakes tomorrow at Churchill, that one of which, the Harrods Creek, which is a really good race. You've got the Dogwood and the Harrods Creek and the Bourbon Trail, and some maiden action. The late half of the card at Churchill. So we'll talk to Marty. Hammer I don't know if he's. I think he got back, and now he's going to get back on the road. We'll talk to him this hour. He came back from Kentucky Downs, and that included a couple of his, postcards on Twitter, including a Grand Canyon. He gave us one of those. He gave us one of those Clark Griswold visuals of of the Grand Canyon. And then his favorite thing, the Cadillac Ranch. The Hammer has to stop at Cadillac Ranch every time he goes by. So we'll check in with him. Nick, in the first half of the show this morning, Nick Tamero. We'll get some plays from Nick. We'll check in with James Scully. Ed's off this week. He's got a fun family function that he's taking care of this morning. So Ed is excused. And we'll talk to Chris Griffin. I thought there was potential earlier in the week that I might have Chris at hand and that we be together at Ben Salem at Parks, but we'll do it by phone. We'll get Chris's thoughts, and of course Chris was right here. I'm up in the press box today, and Chris was right in the crow's nest, right over here, right above us last week, and did a super job. Dave Grenick, and Dave will come up here at some point. It's pretty much Dave Grenick's press box. Dave, the regular happy two of this particular press box. We'll get some thoughts. He's going to be down at Parks tomorrow to cover the Cotillion Derby Day. So we'll get both. We'll get some New York coverage from Dave as well, and of course next week things really in earnest start up, and the the serious preps for Breeders' Cup. We'll check in with Bobby Shoemaker. We'll get some plays from Bobby as well today. Didn't talk to him last week, but we'll see what Bobby likes going into the weekend. And I want to check in with Papo, too, and get a couple of form-to-win plays from Papo Morales. So a busy morning, and if there's a window at some point, I might reach down to Mike Welch. And here's the opportunity to mention what's going on at Gulfstream. Tomorrow, they've got the two Rich Stakes, the two Florida Stallion Stakes, and a couple of other smaller ones. Hollywood, you got the Hollywood Beach, as well as what's that? There's one more Stallion. There's one more Stallion Series race, and I'm drawn the Wildcat Air. The Wildcat Air. So they got nice card, and I wouldn't mind from Mike an update as to where things are with they're starting light training on the synthetic racetrack. It was supposed to start this weekend, and they pulled up from that, as I mentioned. They hadn't really made arrangements for testing and getting horses over it light. They can't. There's no timed workouts. Nobody can breeze. It's just gallops and, just trying to get the feel and let maintenance do what they've got to do. It's, a little bit of a learning curve, not to mention the weather's effect on the synthetic track. So we'll see. If we get a minute to check in with Mike, we'll do that. All right. As Casey reaches for Marty, let me slip in one of the first of the mentions, and Delaware Park. And, Delaware gets its moment in the sun during the summer with the Del Cap and with the Oaks, and, there's some certain moments that you look and check out the Delaware card. They've got a fabulous card tomorrow. All the Delaware bred races and the restricted action, and if you have the inclination, take a look. The Rosenberger and the Newcastle. There's a terrific allowance with a full field of 13. The First State Dash, the tax-free, all that. The Small Wonder and the Governor's Day. This is always a good card, and it comes tomorrow at Delaware Park. I think I've got Marty McGee standing by. Mart! This just always makes me laugh. Marty, good morning. Coming to you from Belmont.
How about that? I'm coming to you from my man cave, so to speak, watching the Ryder Cup. So let's make this a quick one today, Vic.
All right, we can do that. Marty, the action got started, of course, at Churchill last week. Let me reach for some of my Churchill stuff, and I talked about Hidden Connection with Brett Calhoun. Didn't really get a chance. I thought maybe we'd get to Todd Pletcher, but we didn't. About Major General, and then, of course, we did talk to Michelle Lovell about Just Might, but there was Wisconsin's win in the Open Mind. Quick survey from opening salvo of the Churchill September.
Yeah, it was a really eventful night. I think the star to emerge clearly was the Hidden Connection, the Calhoun filly, who won off by herself. Brett, I was kind of surprised at how, before the race, how optimistic he had been, but he was going off a rag number. He said she got a 9.5 in her maiden win at Colonial, which is, pretty big for a 2-year-old filly. And then she ran back to that number and contacted him Monday morning. He said she'll just train into the Breeders' Cup, so I guess she will be one of the favorites for the juvenile fillies on November 5 at Del Mar. And, there was another storyline to that. Raylu Gutierrez, who grew up around Finger Lakes, and I counted him up. He's ridden at 24 different tracks. He's only 25 years old. but I've met him in Florida with Walt Blum. Tried to get him going, and he's bounced around everywhere. But now the young Jose Santos has him, and that was his first ever not just his first win on the meet, it was his first ever win at Churchill, and it came in very dramatic fashion on that filly for Brett. So there were a lot of things happening here on Saturday night.
Very much, and the Raylu story is part of the charm. The wonderful picture of him hugging Hidden Connection, and he's a bright kid, and he's been kind of co-opted, I think, by the public. They really kind of bought in on Raylu. So yeah, it is a fun story. The racing's been good, and going to this weekend, we got a little troika of stakes, and the Dogwood and this Bourbon Trail and the Harrods Creek. And the Harrods Creek is going to be part of the cross-country Pick 5, and it happens to be a very good 7/8 3-year-old group, and particularly because you've got short-priced favorites in the other two stakes, Marty. I'd love to get your take on this Harrods Creek, because I thought this was a deep, contentious group.
Well, I'm turning right now to the Hermes picks. I just picked up my form for tomorrow. And you would have done well to follow Hermes yesterday at Churchill, because I had a best bet that came back 19 and change. And I got out for the meat pick. I hit the early pick 4 because I singled the Hartman winner in race 3 yesterday. It was the angle I used on that horse. The horse's name was Beyond a Million. She was like the only kind of proven dirt horse in there. I told you with the no turf racing at this meet. Last time we talked, you're going to see a lot of turf to dirt, and a lot of that's not going to work out, and it didn't for the rivals that Beyond a Million ran against in the third race yesterday. She airballed by about 10 for Hartman, and I actually texted him yesterday morning. I said, and I took a picture of the best bet and said 15-1. No way, she was 15-1 on the morning line. She ended up paying 8-1. But anyway, yeah, my Hermes pick in the I'm going with. He's my honey badger for Ian. That's yet another Cox. I'm going with Cox in that race, just kind of by default. I was really intrigued, though, when we're talking about race 10 tomorrow, the inaugural running of the Harrods Creek. Really intrigued as to what kind of betting that the number 5 horse Emerald Forest will get. He's not only had the highest buyer in the field, but he's had the last 3 highest buyers, 92, a 96, and a 93. But those were at Louisiana Downs and Evangeline, and that kind of form usually doesn't draw the kind of money that it would otherwise, say, if it was a horse from New York with those big numbers, when they'd be 3-5. So I thought it was a way wide open race. I kind of even gave Ram a shot if he'll run back to one of his big races. He's 15-1 on the line. But yeah, again, I'm going to go with he's my honey badger. He's been pretty steady recently for Cox, and he's 6-1 with Martin Garcia up as number 4 in a field of 10 in the $275,000 Harrods Creek. Race 10 tomorrow of 11 at Churchill.
I don't have a problem with the quality of Shane Wilson's Emerald Forest. The problem I've got is there's a lot of speed in this, Mark. Don't you have to be looking for somebody that's going to kind of stalk and go, or for somebody to come from off of it? And there actually are not a whole bunch of candidates on that front either.
Well, I mean, Ram does have some late run. The way he won on, what was it, Derby or Oaks? It was Derby, the Derby opener, the way he came from off the pace to win that. And, of course, Wayne put him in the Preakness, and that was no good. But he's my honey badger. He's got some late kick to him, too, I think. So if he wants to... If Garcia, or, if Garcia can just kind of get him to relax out of that longer mile race, then, maybe that'll work.
You know who I think is worth a glance? Larry Jones won yesterday, I saw, and this Bob's Edge, the 3, that allowance win at Churchill in May, that would suffice here. That puts him in the mix at 8-1.
It does, but what about the 7/8 for him, though? I mean, that's kind of a question mark. Larry had a winner yesterday who you really had to look close on the form. Her name was Windmill, and I think she was 15-1 on the morning line. Ended up paying 6-1, but her form had really gone bad, and she won, I believe, the Dixie Belle with Talamo back in January, February, and then her form went awry. But there she was from the open air outside box, from where the air is fresh and clear, and she got a perfect trip from there and beat some pretty decent fillies, including the Cherie DeVoe favorite in there.
Give us a quick glance. Caribbean Caper is even money for Al Stahl out of the Audubon Oaks win. This is in the Dogwood. And then you've got 6-5 on King Fury for McPeak in the Bourbon Trail.
Well, Caribbean Caper, Al Stahl was he exuded confidence to me. I can read him pretty well, and sometimes he's a little iffy on his chances. But he said he hasn't even moved her out of her stall at the training center, at Trackside Training Center, except to get her out to train her, because he says everything has gone so smoothly for her over the summer, including her win in the Audubon Oaks, that he didn't want to change her routine at all until after this race. So they've got her even money on the line. The competition isn't that good. The two outside fillies, Patty H and Someone Said So, they might be the sacrificial pace setters for her, but I think she gobbles them up and pays, $3 or whatever. The next race, I think that Sermon on the Mount has the best chance to beat King Fury. Clearly, King Fury is the class, but there's not a lot of pace in there. So, he's the type who you would think needs it to be fast up front to make his run. But, McPeak's really hot. He had two of the last three winners last night, a couple of nice-looking maidens. So, he's doing pretty good these days.
The two maiden races that buffet the pick five, there's a 6 furlong for the 2-year-olds that was obviously split into fields of 9 each. Anything clever in there or anything newsworthy of either race? I did not get to do any pedigree work on these.
Yeah, I'm sitting here writing about Sunday right now, Vic, while I'm also keeping an eye on Jordan Spieth and some of these other guys. But anyway. Now, and I'm also doing some work on the races next week. The ACAC and the Lucas Classic. Lucas Classic, of course, is supposed to be the final Breeders' Cup Classic prep for Knicks Go. I don't know how much trouble they're going to have getting horses to run against them, but I'm running down these lists. That you've got 24 and 29 nominated for both races. 15 of them are in common, so you got a lot of decisions to make before they enter next Wednesday for both of those races. One of course, we're having no turf racing here. The ACAC is a 1-turn mile, and then the Lucas Classic, a mile and an eighth. I think Sprawl for Tommy Drury is going to run against Knicks Go, but that's about all that the racing office has come up with so far.
Well, and I can only add, when it comes to those two maiden races, in the 11th, Letty for the Highland Brats, a $90,000 Keeneland Yearling by Arrogate, happens to be a half to Neck and Neck, who we remember fondly from the Ian Wilkes barn. And Michael Tomlinson has got a gun rudder out of Somalia. Somalia, the mare, not Somalia, the nation. This is a Woolsey Kinder homebred, and of course, being out of Somalia makes this one a half to Looking for 8 that Michael trained, and is a nice horse, Looking for 8. So
yeah, for what it's worth, Hermes has Federal Hill picked in there, the 8 horse for Rudy Brissett.
Federal Hill, and you know where the most famous Federal Hill is.
I'm going to say in Baltimore. No, wait.
Not bad. You've got the right kind of. No, you got the right kind of city.
Boston.
Oh, you're getting closer. You're literally within 45 minutes.
I don't know. Go ahead, Vic.
Providence.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Order yourself a cabinet. Have yourself a coffee milk.
I gotta go, Vic.
No, you don't. You got the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup's not going anywhere. You've got 3 things to talk about. Neil Howard's retirement. You wrote really glowingly and I thought sensitively about Neil giving up full-time training of his own strain.
Yeah, he gave me that scoop. He called me like last Thursday, and we held it till Monday morning. So we were able to break it, in print and everything. And man, I was talking to Neil. The first recollection I have of him was when I was still with the Sun paper back in 1990 when he brought Summer Squall to the Preakness. So over the years, I even remember seeing him out at the Hollywood Gold Cup in '91 when the Sun sent me out there, and he had Summer Squall. He must not have won because I know Marquetry won that race. And down through the years, the time that he was really, Neil gets nervous about things, and so he was really worried that nobody was going to believe him that Mine Chef could not run in the Breeders' Cup Classic in 2003. So he called me early on a Sunday morning. He said, "Where are you? Come look at these X-rays for me." Well, I don't know what I'm looking at with an X-ray. So can I bring my consultant, or was my little brother? And so we went out there, and he showed us these X-rays up against the light in his tack room and everything. So he just wanted me to vouch for him that it's not reasonable to run mine shafts in the Breeders' Cup Classic. So that's the kind of history I have with Neil. So he wanted to make sure that I did not have him crying sour grapes about, what you often hear from a lot of the trainers who have to go out of business or choose to go out of business, that the super trainers, they got 300 and 400 horses and blah, 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 and, cry me a river. He did not want the story to be that. So I made sure that was the right tone I got. He's going over to Shug. Shug could not have spoken more glowingly about Neil and the kind of horseman he is. So I think they're going to make a pretty solid team with Shug clearly expanding his holdings here on the Kentucky circuit with all these big purses. So that's that. And, I told Neil, now don't lose touch with me. If you got a Shug type of scoop, in the coming months or years or whatever, make sure you don't lose my phone number.
Well, what I talked about the other day when you came with the story, and I certainly want to get Neil on, but I guess the forerunner of this was David Carroll going to work for Mark Assey.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened with a number of people. I guess the guy has to swallow his pride to a certain degree, or, a guy like Neil, he doesn't really seem to care. He still gets to do what he does every day, go to the barn and be around those horses.
Exactly.
And, it's kind of not a huge change. He's still in the same line of work and everything. So I think, as the years unfold, Steve, we'll probably see some more of that, where you have more consolidation and teaming up of a guy who's proven as a trainer on his own, as an assistant to the Coxes and Chad Browns and Todds of the world.
Well, and part of this story that it's not a buried lead by any means, but part of the story is Claude Ray has expanded as much as anybody at what would be considered a late stage of his career. I mean, first was the barn in Fair Hill, and now kind of a major beachhead in Kentucky, and that's frankly I think a big part of the story. And when you fold in some of the expanded clientele that Shug has brought in, that's a major story.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we used to pigeonhole him as Phipps and Janney only, but now
exactly.
You'll see him with the Claiborne and the Farish and the and the Helen Alexander and all them. So he's probably got a dozen clients or whatever, maybe more. He's probably got whoever he wants. To be frank.
Yeah, exactly. Mark, a couple other quick hits. I recirculated the Declan Cannon update, and the nice amount of money raised for Deck and his family to hold them over while he recovers post spine surgery.
Yeah, I've been in touch with his agent. Decky's such a sweet kid. I hate to pin that on him. He's 34, and he probably doesn't like me saying that, but he's the kind of guy that everybody likes almost immediately. And I just happened to be watching Indiana. It was a week ago Monday, so it's been 11 days or whatever. And I saw it happen. Of course, they didn't replay it, so you had to watch it live, and unless you had, you were at home doing it on your TV or whatever. But it was really an ugly-looking spill. They say that he can already walk stairs. He's walking on his own, walking stairs. I assume he has one of those braces on it. But his agent Tim Hanisch has been, expressing his gratitude at all the well wishes that Declan's been receiving, and the doctors, according to Hanisch, are saying that he will make a full recovery. It'll be 6 months or so. So, this is September. I guess we'll look for him at the end of Turfway or maybe Keeneland or something next year, Indiana, and he'll be back at it. So, you and I have talked about this, more than a dozen times. These guys are so brave. What they do is just so admirable, and I've kind of got skin in the game now with Joe Talamo, being married to my niece and everything. They got 2 kids, and they live 2 miles from me. It's you kind of hold your breath every time they go out there on these horses.
For sure.
And, it's just I'm glad that Declan's going to be okay.
Finally, Marty, the Brad Cox barn, and it's been a newsworthy week, and of course that included I don't know how you can't term it disappointing. The retirement of Monomoy Girl, and it seemed to me that everything that's gone on has been a coda to what was already a Hall of Fame career, but they had to pull up on her after a little sesamoid fracture, and too bad, but she's done enough, as they say.
You there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Some noise came over, but no. I mean, Brad could not have been. I asked him about Monomoy Girl Saturday night at the races, and his face lit up. Like, man, she is doing great. And then, of course, it was Tuesday morning when she hurt herself. Not seriously, because there's going to be no surgery involved. But as you said, what she was doing was a coda to she's already in the Hall of Fame. Essentially. So, she was 6, though. I mean, she's 6. She would have been 7 in a few months. So, I mean, we don't see mares go past 4 or 5 much anymore. So what she was doing was just an add-on. But if you go back and review what she did, it was spectacular.
Yeah.
And, the Breeders' Cups and the Oaks and all that. So it was, and plus, she did launch Brad into the big time. And now here he is, duking it out with the Chads and the Todds and the Baffords. So, yeah.
Oh, well, and also I would also add, not only was she a launch pad for him, but for Liz Crow and Brad Weisborn.
And maybe arguably for Florent Giroux, too. I mean,
there we go. Yeah.
It kind of sealed him into the big time, too.
Well, and finally from the Brad Cox barn, too, you mentioned, you wrote the piece about essential quality, going to train up to the Breeders' Cup, as opposed to Nick's Go, who's going to get that prep, as mentioned. And, in fact, you just sent me a text. You've got a late addition, it looks like, potentially to the Lucas field.
Yeah, Tacitus, it looks like, is going to run in the against Nick's Go. I don't know how many they'll get, maybe 5 or 6, but whoever's running against him, they're going to be at a tactical disadvantage. Speed has been pretty good at this meet, and it's the old dilemma. Do you want to go out there and burn yourself out just to ruin his chances, or you want to let him walk the dog and let him go wire to wire? So, it looks like Tacitus, the highly accomplished mod horse, is going to try him. As far as essential quality, I wasn't even sure, Vic, is whether or not Brad had said that or not, that he was going to train him up. I think maybe he had been considering another race for him. Would it have been the Woodward, or what would it have been for essential quality? I don't know. I was kind of coy as to whether or not that was breaking news or not. I wasn't even kind of sure myself.
Well, the other poor horse that got completely buried by the Monomoy Girl news was poor Juliet Foxtrot, who
Yeah. Oh, she was a footnote to my story. Yeah. Oh, by the way, she's retired.
Yeah.
The grade 1 one.
Oh, by the way, it's like, come on.
Yeah, he didn't say what was wrong with her, but you periodically update these horses in your computer, and she'd had no works and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
She's gone. She went home a while ago, I think.
Yeah. Marty, thanks so much. We'll look forward to the weekend and to talk to you ahead of next week. And, of course, Keeneland shaping up as well. And, in fact, from that same story, Bonnie South to the Spinster, and always a good lead into the distaff. So much going on. Marty, thanks.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Marty McGee, everybody. We'll stay right here because Hammer is standing by, and he literally was home for at least 16 hours before getting ready to go somewhere again. Hammer!
Hey, good morning. Yes, I'm at home here in beautiful Chatsworth, California.
For how long, though?
About another hour. Oh, can't get enough of the road. No, we're headed up to Sacramento, California for a good friend's daughter's wedding. So that was had to get back in town for that. So one day to regroup, and we'll head up to 5, which haven't been north in a while. So probably my most traveled road in my life, like going from here to San Francisco area. But haven't been on that road in a while. So we'll head up north to the state capital and do that number. But had a good run coming home. I don't know. I'm one of those guys that loves to drive, and whether it's by myself or with my wife or anybody, I really enjoy it. So, well, it took the long way home from Kentucky Downs. As you know, we went to Bristol, Tennessee for the NASCAR race, the night race there, which was really something special to see that. I mean, what an organized event for having 80 plus thousand. I'm going to say just so well organized in and out, and just sitting there at 10 o'clock at night watching cars go around in a half-mile place in Bristol, Tennessee was kind of cool in itself. So had a good run after finishing up the Kentucky Downs meet. So, and then, as you mentioned earlier, on the drive home, I have to stop at that Cadillac Ranch outside of Amarillo, for a couple of reasons. When you're driving that way, that Route 40, which you've done just so many times, it's kind of boring. So, you know what? It's kind of a good time. It's always a good little respite. You're going to stop at a rest area, might as well stop there and go see the Cadillacs buried nose first in the dirt. And there's always something new there. So I ended up hitting there at sunrise on purpose, and just a totally different scene there, kind of very tranquil, and seeing the sunrise come up in a flat place like Amarillo is kind of cool in itself. But anyway, we did that. And then made a surprise stop at the Grand Canyon. The next day, was just driving through, stopped at Flagstaff, and was kind of in decision time whether to try and drive another 6 hours home or do something different. I called Gina, and I said, "Can you get me a room at the Grand Canyon?" She said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, just see what you can do." So she got me a room, and I got there about 5, and it's off-season there. And I don't remember being there this time of year. It was cool in the 70s, so I hiked down about a mile and back up. And then the next morning before I took off, I went on a little hike on the Rim Trail, which is basically up and down the rim, saw the sunrise. And I'm telling you, for 2 hours, there was nobody on the trail. And it was so peaceful. I was like spiritual, just kind of sitting there looking out over the Grand Canyon in the morning. It was just so neat. And I just really implore people to go out and, go check this stuff out. We got some great things in this country, but I'll tell you, I've been in the Grand Canyon a dozen times. It was just so jaw-dropping and so cool. So if you're near, you want something to do, and go in the off season. It was just super cool. So anyway, some side trips along the way, and to make the road a little interesting. But we'll get ready now, and like I said, go to Sacramento, relax for a little bit, and then we'll be heading east again. But it's all good. Hate to think about this Arlington deal. It's tell everybody that people I talk to that do Arlington. I've only been there twice in my life. I was there for the pre-opening when the new track was opening, and I think it was 1989. And then I was there for the Breeders' Cup, and that's it. But I got the feel in those two visits, and it's going to happen. And all the locals that go, it won't sink in for a couple of years. So it's kind of like the Hollywood Park thing. It's like, no, this really isn't going to happen. This really isn't going to happen. It happened. And then, like I said, it was just years that went by, and it's like, this place is really gone. I can't go there anymore. And so I feel it. I mean, everybody out here that was a racing fan and happened to Hollywood Park, you just, and every time you fly over and you look down, you see the Ram Stadium, and every time you go to the Forum, you look over and you see, that used to be Hollywood Park. It's almost like it's like a dream. But I feel bad for you. Just like you said earlier, who would have thought this? I mean, as little as a year ago, 2 years ago, right? I mean, this Hollywood Park was a countdown. It's like another year. It was going to happen. But gosh, you just didn't really think it was going to happen, did you?
No, and it's one thing. It's one thing when, as you mentioned, there's the long lead up, and everyone knew Suffolk and Bay Meadows and Hollywood Park. This is difficult to accept for a different reason, and that is that there's active interest in maintaining it for racing. And there's parties that are quite willing to step up and pay a market price for the real estate. And the absolute indifference to that reality by Churchill Corporate is what is just kind of just mystifying. And if it's a preemptive posture to eliminate the possibility of a casino facility ending up in Arlington, 10 miles from the Rivers facility they own. I mean, from a business standpoint, I guess okay, but has it occurred that if, let's say, the Bears build a stadium there, that there isn't, you don't think that there isn't political clout and potential to have gaming of some ilk at a facility like that? The whole serpentine storyline that's involved in this, and the government, the strange machinations of Springfield and Chicago City, and going back to those riverboats, it's been just incredible, these 15 years of it. It's I mean, a million times this all could have been and was supposed to be taken care of successfully to assure a future and stability for Illinois breeding and racing. And at every turn, it's like, it's not just Lucy and the football. It's like Lucy moves the football and then shoots Charlie Brown.
I mean, that's a good. I'm not as familiar with the local politics and what happened. Just the just the finality of it. It's just, like I said, you'll get kicked in the teeth now, but it'll really start hurting in a couple of years. It's hard to believe. Just a beautiful facility like that, and I don't know. Like you said, there are entities involved that they want to keep racing going. So I don't understand it, but it's happening, and I guess they came out with some dates the other day. Obviously, racing in Illinois is going to downsize a little bit, and we'll see the effects of it, on the breeding and further down the road.
Well, and given what's going on down in Collinsville and down at at Fairmont is going to have a stable future and an enhanced future. So there is that, and basically Hawthorne, has the potential here, and they're going to resume construction on their casino. Marcus is going to address all this next, but Hawthorne is going to go from kind of a B minus facility and racing to a B plus, give or take, and you would guess that Fairmont goes from kind of a C track to to a C plus B minus, and they're they're gonna fight for horses. I mean, the beneficiary of all this is certainly Canterbury, Prairie Meadows, Indiana, and Ohio, and that's one of the realities of this, Hammer. That there are those ebbs and flows to the horse population, and this is the bigger story involved here is gaming, and how gaming changes the flow of the horse flesh. And that's involved here, and that's why it was so important that that the historic horse racing machinery in Kentucky got secured to stabilize and to basically stop horses leaving Kentucky for Indiana, West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. I mean, this is a lot of people say that that's the worst negative effect of the Racino funding and the money that comes from the alternate gaming is that it drew horses away from some of our most cherished circuits. That's the bigger story.
Well, you're right. You wonder how many of the the trainers and owners groups up there that are used to racing, have more dates, decide to say, hey, let's maybe move our operation to the more lucrative lower Midwest there with Kentucky and Oaklawn, and kind of get out of the whole region. And that's some of the long-term suffering that goes on when a track like that shuts down. It's you just don't know. Out here, we had one track. Hollywood shut down in the Bay Meadows situation. Everybody just moved to Golden Gate or Santa Anita. It was no big deal. But in the region there, with so many tracks, nearby. I mean, nearby within, even within 1,000 miles is kind of nearby. You wonder who's going to move permanently and who's going to stick it out. So it'll play out in a while. A couple other things that you talked with Marty about there towards the end, so he had to go hit golf balls. Monomoy girl. I mean, I tell you what a special filly. We've had a lot of them in the last, decade or so, but, I've just pulled up her record, and just look at that. 14 out of 17, 3 places, won every race possibly could win for fillies. The comebacks, she ran in 17, she ran in 18, she took a year off, came back in 20, and then, ran a couple times this year, including, at her last race where she ran bravely and got beat the nose in the Apple Blossom. And, just one of those once-in-a-lifetime deals. And then I think you or Marty brought up, really, I think, put Brad on the map. Said, hey, look at me. Look what I can do. I can train a good horse. And anyway, she was special. I was very happy to see her run, in both in person and on TV. But that last race, I remember standing there at the finish line just watching her give her all at the end and get nipped by the Truska. But just one of those special fillies that came along. We're happy to see. Dale Howard, you mentioned Dale Howard. He's such a super guy. I don't know if you've had him on yet, but it looks like the trainers are building their own syndicates, right? So having him going to work for Shug, I mean, what a great combination. I mean, Neil just did everything. He was he was a little nervous about things, and he would put a horse in and come back and check 2 or 3 times, make sure it was in, and make sure the owner had their seats, and make sure he's just dotted the I's and crossed the T's with everything he did. A total pro, just a great guy. Very happy to see him, continue in the game and take a little pressure off and
exactly.
Going to work for Shug can't be all that bad, right? I mean, that's a great move.
Yeah. It's a and Neil is I was actually It's funny. As long as he's been around, I still was surprised that he was 72.
Yeah, you guys, they're just, he's just Neil. You don't worry about that. They just move on like you do, and nobody asked your age in this game. That's for sure. You just move on. But anyway, great guy. I'm just happy to see him. He's excuse me, hasn't run as much in the last 4 or 5 years, and said, hey, I still want to be involved with good horses, and glad that relationship with Shug worked out, and with Shug expanding is perfect. I mean, it just makes sense. So, a couple races maybe you want to talk about.
Go ahead. Yep.
Park. I mean, I'll tell you what, they put together just a super program. I looked at the weather; it looks like they're going to be safe tomorrow.
The weather's going to be fine.
Yeah. So I was worried when I heard that the races are off the turf today there, where you are in Belmont, that it might affect it, but it doesn't look like it. Haven't heard. I just heard of the 2 Baffert horses that aren't running. I don't know if there's any more. We'll check in the morning. But I mean, before scratches, this is a super card. I just want to touch on a couple of the races. The Park's Dirt Mile. Boy, I tell you what, for an ungraded race for 200, this thing came up great. And I think, isn't this the race that Spun to Run ran in?
Yes.
Before he won the Breeders' Cup a couple of years ago.
Yep.
It was called something else, but I think that What
they were doing with this race was the name would change. It was a stake named after the previous year's Pennsylvania Derby winner every year. It would be the Bayern, and then it was the West Coast, and then it was the whatever, and then they said, well, this is silly, and they they locked it into the Park's Dirt Mile.
Okay, well, but yeah. So then this is the race. So having a little small, a race like this that does have a little backstory. So the horses from here have gone on to the Breeders' Cup as few times in this run. But I mean, this come up super. Silver State in here, Warriors Charge in here, Mind Control decides to check out the mile distance around 2 turns. So very good event here. Obviously, a horse like Silver State probably prepping for the mile, and a nice little way to go in. Not running against the heavy heads. I mean, this horse has had quite a year. Obviously winning the Met, but at Oakland, you get to see this horse developing. Didn't run bad last time in the Whitney. It looks like the mile not be his distance. I mean, he's going to be the horse to beat in here. Warriors Charge always, from 10 Strike. Marshall and his Marshall Graham and his crew at 10 Strike, they do a great job spotting their horses. So this horse is going to like this a little bit in there, and it'd be interesting to see how Mind Control likes the mile. He's wanted a mile before. I didn't go back and see if that was a 2-turn deal, but now that Todd has them, they're trying a few different things. But this race isn't graded yet, but we'll see after this running, and the last couple runnings haven't been too bad. But Silver State, obviously, the horse to beat in that run. The Turf Monster, coming off the heels of the race that we ran at Kentucky Downs, the $1 million turf that was the winner you're in for the Breeders' Cup. This race, which got sprinters in the land, that was at 6 furlongs. This is at 5 furlongs, so a different type of race, which will be the distance that it is at Del Mar. And this race come up great. Good job by them getting this. This is a grade 3, so there is some grading in there. Fire Crow. I'm looking at Fire Crow a little bit from Ron Moquette coming off a win at Pimlico with a little time off. Would love this thing. Got a nice number last time. Fire Crow is nice in there. Caravel, the mare, filly, I should say. 5 for 5 at the distance, and I know that she runs well here. And wins. They might be Breeders' Cup bound for her. Look at Battle Station in there, kind of quietly under the radar. Won the Parks Dash, got beat a nose in the Parks Dash last time. Price is going to drift up. I might look at Battle Station there, a little bit of a price. So I mean, I'm all over the 8.95. There's the 3 horses to beat in here. The Cotillion. With that scratch of Private Mission, obviously she was going to have the Baffert gas and go on, and not being in there, the whole race changes a little bit. Clariere. We kind of call her the female Midnight Bourbon. They run really good races against really good horses. They both haven't won since early in the fairgrounds meet, and both only have a couple wins to their credit, but are just super horses. Looks like she's sitting on a good one, as is Army Wife. Looks like she's sitting on a good one too, off that good run in the Alabama. But you know what? I think who's going to get lost in the shuffle is Obligatory again. Now, her two-turn try at the fairgrounds wasn't great. She hasn't been around 2 turns again. Maybe that's why the price is going to be a little higher. But I mean, she's got some back numbers here that fit well with this group. I think her price might drift up a little bit. Jose Ortiz on for Belmont in a grade 1. I'd take a look at her at a price, along with, of course, Army Wife and Clariere. But those are the ones I looked at there. And the PA Derby, once again, Midnight Bourbon has won 2 races out of 11. I mean, his best race might have been the last one where he just got nailed by Essential Quality and the Travers, coming right back here as a prep. Hot Rod Charlie, we all know about him. Crossed the line first in the Haskell and was taken down. He's only won 2 races as well, but has just some super, super numbers in here. So on paper, it looks like these 2 guys kind of a little match race in their own little world. I think the goofball horse in here is Mott again with that Speaker's Corner. Who knows what kind of horse this is? I mean, he had to try him something after that last race at Saratoga. Running 101 buyer, just ran through the TV and said, you know what, there's a grade 1 down the road for a lot of money. Let's just take a shot. So has a little trouble maybe coming out of the gate. I noticed a couple times, but maybe this horse can say, hey, I belong. But I think it's the 2, the 7, and the 8. But like I said, the goofball horse for me is the 3, Speaker's Corner.
And it's an interesting group. I mean, to me, it more comes down to the Midnight Bourbon and Hot Rod Charlie. But we'll see how everybody shakes out. And Hammer, I appreciate it. We'll be starting to dig in on Breeders' Cup preps next week as some of the big opportunities unfold.
I think Santa Anita opens up next week with some races here, so we'll get down on those. Might even make a rare run out to the great race place and check out the races on the weekend. But now's the time. Start looking, start watching, and not just for the winners. I always say don't just hum and haw about the winners. Oh my gosh, look at that race! Look at the horses that ran 2nd, 3rd, and 4th that maybe had a little trouble, or maybe we're actually using those races as prep races for the one to come. That's where you get your prices. So start watching and count down to Del Mar's here, baby.
That's true. Hammer, safe travels to Sacramento, and we'll talk next week.
Sounds great. Thanks, Steve. Enjoy the weekend, everybody.
Away they go, everybody. Rick Hammerling. And we'll stay here. And another half hour to the bottom. And we'll take probably just one break this morning with all the topics to cover. And Marcus Hirsch joins us from the Daily Racing Forum with the most difficult topic to cover this weekend. Marcus, good morning. Marcus. Case, pick him up. Marcus, he must have the he must have muted the phone. You want to pick him up? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Casey will pick him up. And as he does that, I'm going to mention, considering that part of our topic that came up with Arlington and with Hammer, is the other facilities around the region. Prairie Meadows has got the Iowa Bread Festival, and nice slate. Starts at 4 o'clock Central tomorrow, goes till early evening. Last post is at 8:43 Central, and you've got all the Iowa Bread steaks that you know and love, like the Donna Reed and the Iowa Breeders' Derby and Oaks. And the Iowa Cradle features a horse that I've been in contact with Kelly Von Hemel. And KVH has got a really nice, not this time, by the name of Ain't Life Grand. 4-5. And he's more, as I wrote after his stake win in September, this is more than a nice Iowa bred. 8 Life Grand at 7:07 in the Iowa Cradle. There's Marcus Hirsch joining us. Good morning.
Hi, Steve. Sorry, I don't know what happened the first time.
No, that's all right. Not at all. I had Rick Hammerly just now, and he brought, unprompted, he brought up Arlington and everything that surrounds this story. You covered, as always, the racing board discussion involving the dates, and this sort of really crystallized things ahead of tomorrow's last card of the season, and seemingly the last card of potentially the existence of Arlington Park. Marcus, no one wants to really believe or accept this.
Yeah, there wasn't actually much discussion that I could hear on that racing board meeting. Maybe a little at the end, but the board has the composition of the board has changed a lot over time. I was a little disappointed in the approach they took. I thought maybe there'd be more discussion of if they really were concerned about this circuit being existent, about some substantive questions about how things are going to work out in the future. I didn't hear much of that. I heard like the pro forma questions that they're required by statute to ask at these meetings, and then after some technical difficulties, there's only one applicant in Chicagoland for 2 breeds, so this whole schedule was already worked out beforehand. They had to talk to the horsemen. No good options with running harness horses and thoroughbreds on the same track over the course of a year. You got Fairmont downstate, and that's 2022. Since nobody has heard anything recently, or at least no one I've talked to about CDI's plans for Arlington or the sale process, I guess we can't say for sure what's going to happen in any regard, but we do know that there won't be racing there next year because the laws are pretty clear. If you don't apply for dates, then you can't be awarded dates, and you can't have a meet the next season.
So essentially, we just play out this and await whatever announcements are forthcoming. Because it sure seemed from this piece you wrote that nobody had anything to really add in terms of the future, whatever direction it's going to take.
Well, I always didn't understand, I just didn't think it seemed reasonable that in this bidding process that was opened up earlier in the year, from the statements that were made and the positions that have been taken, and just from I'm not a business person at all, but it just seems highly unlikely that that the owner would sell to an entity that wanted to open a racino, which they didn't want to begin with. And it's hard for me to imagine, although I have heard that some people think it could be feasible to operate a racetrack without a casino funding the purses. I mean, that's been kind of the whole crux of the issue here. So if you assume that a racing venue is going to go for a casino, I can't really see those bidders being seriously considered by the seller. Maybe that's completely incorrect. I will say that Chris Block, who I talked to, he's a trainer. His family, Team Block, has been a pillar of Illinois racing, breeding and racing for decades now. He sits on the board of the ITHA, and it was filed paperwork to run for president of that organization against the current president, Mike Campbell, another trainer. He said he and I didn't write this because I didn't have space for it, but he's not even hoping for one of these racing-related investment entities to win a bid because it doesn't seem plausible. He said his only hope is that the Bears buy it and don't need the whole parcel and would be willing to talk to people about leaving the racetrack, and having that be part of whatever the property comes to be. And obviously, that's a huge long shot, and no one has had any discussions regarding that at all. But that's how little hope that this particular person has that anything coming out of the sale of the property is going to lead to the continuation of racing there.
We'll let that unfold. And meanwhile, the card tomorrow, it did seem that a lot of people wanted to be part of the potential last day. And there were a few names, Marcus, that kind of jumped out at me that you mentioned Chris Block and Michelle Boyce and Mike Campbell with a starter, Mike Rivas, Ingrid Mason, a lot of the names that have sustained Illinois racing.
Was this one of these test questions where which name doesn't fit in the sequence?
Not really.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And of course Ravelli, we got to get Ravelli in there. But I'll tell you, there's one name that, and I'm going to reach out to him next week because I think he'd have a fascinating perspective to offer, and it's Frank Kirby, who's got to be, 85?
I think he's 84. I just talked to him two Sundays ago when I visited. I had a long talk with him.
He was a
former
Nebraska
IDHA president.
Absolutely, and a guy that has got deep roots, including a farm and more than one farm, I think. And but he's a guy that was kind of a Pale of Settlement candidate, right? I mean, he came to the Arizona circuit and then Nebraska and then ultimately Chicago, and I'd be very curious. Right?
I'm not sure that he was, but I'm happy to be educated on that. I know he had a big presence in New Mexico.
Yes, yeah, that's.
And
I think he's from New Mexico.
Presence, strangely, Puerto Rico.
Well, that's
he married Sharon. I can't remember her maiden name. Her father was this very successful businessman and horse owner. And Frank still has the factory. One of the factories that he ran. And they had, at one point, I think they had 400 mares in Illinois alone. That's what Illinois used to be. They had 400 brood mares in Illinois.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, Frank is a great, you should get him on if you can. He's still very sharp. His mind works perfectly fine, and he's got a lot of knowledge. He's seen a lot of stuff. In fact, he says that his father-in-law tried to buy the track when Duchossois bought it. He was the underwriter.
Wow. We'll get Frank next week. I haven't talked to him in way too long. And I'm going to trouble you for the number. I was going to reach out to. I know he's close to the Von Hemels. That I was going to reach out to Donnie or Don and
yeah. He's still got the farm, and they got some horses. He won a few races this year. I don't know what. It's going to be real rough on some of these people. It's already been rough. I mean, the Illinois horse people have not had a good go of things, and They got a grand total of